Hello and welcome. Tonight, the Chief of Defense Staff and other top military officers testified before a special investigative panel. What do they have to say about allegations of human rights violations by the military in the Northeast? It's a charge by PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and former Vice President Namadi Sambo. Party members should remain united and hopeful of victory at the Presidential Election Tribunal. Federal High Court in Abuja assumes jurisdiction in the leadership crisis rocking the Labour Party to hear the substantive suit on the 17th of May.
On business news tonight, Seplat files appeal against lower court's interim order restraining its chairman and other top management executives from carrying out any function in the indigenous energy sector.
On sports news tonight, Paris Saint-Germain coach Christophe Galtier confirms Lionel Messi will feature in Saturday's league game against Ajaccio, marking the Argentina superstar's return from suspension.
Capital, the Vice President commissions the Kano irrigation scheme. 45,000 farming families are expected to benefit from the project.
And international news from London, Ukraine says it has recaptured ground in Bakhmut, a rare advance after months of grinding Russian gains in the eastern city.
About 5 months after allegations of human rights abuses were leveled against Nigeria's military officials serving in the Northeast, the military continues to debunk that report. Today, more military officials testified before the panel probing the allegations. The Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo, was among those who testified and denied the allegation by Reuters that the military has carried out mass abortions in the region. He says the accusations are a ploy to demoralize his men. Our defense correspondent, Emperor Simon, reports.
Away from the theater of war, the Nigerian military is under investigation. Reuters, a foreign media outlet, has accused Nigerian soldiers of carrying out a secret and systematic abortion program since 2013, in which they allegedly terminated at least 10,000 pregnancies of women rescued from the enclaves of Boko Haram fighters or their wives in the northeast region. One after the other, senior military officers appear before the Special Independent Investigation Panel set up by the National Human Rights Commission to investigate the matter.
Women and soldiers described a room in Giwa Barracks where abortions took place. A 40 grey walled space like a hallway where women lay on floor mats amid cockroaches and mosquitoes. So they were not only facing abortion, but they were also placed in inhuman and degrading conditions. What is your response, General?
It's wrong. It's false. Listen, these people should not look. They should not spoil our heads. They should not spoil. They should not discourage us from doing the job. Okay? Because they will sit down somewhere. Reuters. Look at the name Reuters.
Next to testify before the panel is the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo. He takes the oath before being quizzed by the panel.
The record of Reuters in this report has it that the military accosted some group of women, or rather, these women ran to the military as part of the rescue operations, and the military took them in a truck and also isolated their children again, and in this circumstance, took the children one after the other, covered their nose and their mouth together and suffocated these children.
It is not the responsibility of the armed forces to begin to determine who is being stigmatized or who is not being stigmatized. So we have no hand whatsoever in all this, and I do not think they exist. And with respect to the armed forces, certainly there is nothing of this nature.
In the coming days, more testimonies are expected to be given by other witnesses as the panel adjourns its sitting to Monday, May the 15th, 2023. The two reports separately published by Reuters on 7th and 12th of December 2022 also accused the military of carrying out an operation codenamed Operation No Living Things, in which it allegedly massacred thousands of children in the Northeast region. But General Loki Rabo has denied these allegations, describing them as a ploy to demotivate soldiers who are currently in the theater of war. Nevertheless, this special independent investigation panel says it is determined to get to the root of the matter. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
To politics now. The presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, and former Vice President of Nigeria, Namadi Sambo, are asking party members to remain united and hopeful for victory at the Election Petition Tribunal. The two men spoke at a reception ceremony for newly elected serving and outgoing governors of the PDP in Abuja. Mr. Abubakar urges the party leaders to come up with strategies that will enable the party take its dominant place in the country's politics again.
For sure, we have a number of challenges. We started as a dominant political party in 1999, and since then we have been receding. I think it is time for us to take a stock and find out why are we receding, and how can we make sure that our eminent position as the leading political party in this country, as the oldest political party in this country, we regain our position. We all know that we have not lost the last election. So we should remain determined and focused in retrieving our mandate that has been stolen.
On his part, former Vice President Namadi Sambo raised concerns about the spate of suspensions and expulsions of party members at the state level.
What is happening in some states today already is very unfortunate. I will give example of Kaduna State. In Kaduna State today, people are being suspended from the party left, right, and center without due process. And I will seize this opportunity to publicly ask the acting national chairman to look into what is happening in Kaduna State, because all the ingredients for trouble and problem in the party are being put in place. So likewise, all other states, I will seize the opportunity to call on all party members to cooperate, to let the party continue, and seize the opportunity to pray for Almighty God to ensure that our mandate is brought back to our party.
And to legal matters, the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory has assumed jurisdiction in the suit filed by Mr. Yomi Arabambi of the Labour Party and 7 others against Mr. Julius Abure and 3 others. Justice Mazu Hamza stated this while ruling on the preliminary objection filed by Mr. Julius Abure and Mr. Farouk Ibrahim, challenging the jurisdiction of the court to entertain the matter. The suit is based on the order restraining Mr. Julius Abure as well as the National Secretary Alhaji Farouk Ibrahim, the National Organizing Secretary Oluchi Opara, and National Treasurer Clement Ojukwu from parading themselves as leaders of the Labour Party, pending the hearing of a suit seeking their sack over allegations of fraud, amongst others, bordering on alleged forged court documents, including receipts and seal of the FCT High Court, which they had allegedly used in the substitutions of Labour Party's candidates in the 2023 general elections. Meanwhile, the acting National Publicity Secretary of the party, Mr. Obiora Ifo, says the leadership of the Labour Party is highly disappointed by the refusal of the FCT High Court to decline jurisdiction over the matter.
The court today pronounced very clearly that when a political party is in peace, they do not need the intervention of courts. But once there is a crisis in the political party, a crack, that makes it impossible, that makes the center no longer to hold, that invitation by any of the interested party for the court to intervene will be entertained by court. So contrary to their position that the court lacked jurisdiction to entertain the matter, contrary to their position that the matter is not justiciable, my Lord in its infinite wisdom today said no, that the world cannot watch the party crumble without coming or stepping in to intervene.
We are here simply to request for the judge to decline jurisdiction, but in his own utmost wisdom, he said that the court will not decline jurisdiction, that he will go ahead and hear the matter. So we have fixed Friday, next week Friday, 19th of May for the continuation of the matter, and that is where we are. But I can assure you and assure Nigerians and the teeming supporters of Labour Party that we will appeal this ruling. It's not judgment, ruling. We will appeal the ruling because we know that we will never get justice from this court.
Meanwhile, Mr. Lamidia Papa, who is one of the petitioners, speaks on the implication of the ruling.
Come next Friday, the real suit will start when the issue of forgery, conspiracy, and so on and so forth will commence. And from there, we know if actually that offense has been committed or not. I want to use this opportunity again to tell the whole world that the tribunal that's going on, I want to invite all the lawyers that are in charge, that are representing Labour Party, that they should come for briefing. They should come and give me updates of what is happening in that tribunal within the next 48 hours. Because right now, I'm the person on the driver's seat and I'm fully in charge.
Away from legal matters but staying with politics, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mr. Idris Wase, has called on Nigerians to keep sentiments aside and work towards the growth and unity of the country. He said this at his official declaration for the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The fellow colleagues, I want to believe that the principle of fairness, equity and justice as anchored in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Section 14(4) and 3, which says inter alia, that the composition of government of Nigeria, of the Federation of Nigeria, or any of its agencies shall be carried out in such a manner as to reflect the federal character of Nigeria, therefore ensuring that there should be no predominance of persons from a few states or other ethnic group in that government or any of its agencies. This provision is meant to anchor unity, peace, and prosperity. And I want to believe that our party and our leadership would respect this provision of the Constitution and do the needful. The fellow colleagues, I want to urge you that I have a 10 agenda point by the grace of God if given this mandate, and we shall concentrate on the following: general orientation and image rebranding of the National Assembly, ensuring a true People's Parliament, creating an efficient People's Parliament, approaching the nation's building as a task irrespective of your political affiliation, tribe, or religion. This we are part of phase 1 with Femi Bajamila and myself as leader, and we believe we'll do more.
In part two, after the break, Bowen University team, led by its Pro-Chancellor, Deaconess Joanne Ayo, pay courtesy visits to Channels Television's corporate headquarters ahead of the institution's 21st convocation ceremony. We have that in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live from Channels Television. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Chief of Defense Staff and other top military officers testified before a special investigative panel, and all they have to say about allegations of human rights violations by the military in the Northeast. It's a charge by the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and former Vice President Namadi Sambo. Party members should remain united and hope for a victory at the Presidential Election Tribunal. Federal High Court in Abuja assumes jurisdiction in the leadership crisis rocking the Labour Party to hear the substantive suit on the 17th of May. And Ukraine says it has recaptured ground in Bakhmut, a rare advance after months of grinding Russian gains in the eastern city. And a coalition of the All Progressives Congress support groups is criticizing the proposed zoning of the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. Speaking with reporters at the party secretariat in Abuja, members of the support group insist that competence, integrity and trust should be the watchword in the selection process, and not one that is characterized by some level of bias.
A situation where decisions of zoning formula of the 10th National Assembly leadership will be taken by a few persons and imposed on the party without due process is tantamount for provoking opposition, rejection and ill feelings among the party faithfuls. In the light of this development, we appeal to the National Working Committee to embrace democratic spirit by listening to populist opinion and subject their ratification of the zoning formula imposed on the National Working Committee for review with the hope of averting impending crisis and implosion. We are requesting the national chairman of the party, distinguished Senator Abla Adamu, to immediately summon a meeting of the National Executive Council of the party that is constitutionally empowered to take final decision on the above subject matter. However, we are using this medium to make our position known to every member of the National Executive Committee on the need to rise to the occasion and ensure that the zoning arrangement is based on equity, fairness, justice for national cohesion. We are equally appealing to the President-elect to resume his fatherly role as the national leader of the party and allow the constitutional independence of the three arms of government to function without undue interference. We are requesting that he reconsider his stance on the zoning arrangement and allow for further review by the National Executive Committee of the party.
And ahead of the inauguration of the president-elect, 5 residents of the Federal Capital Territory FCT have sued the Attorney General of the Federation and the Chief Justice of Nigeria over the declaration of Senator Bola Tinubu as the nation's president-elect. The plaintiffs in the suit filed before the Federal High Court Abuja on April 28, 2023, aver that Senator Tinubu failed to secure at least 25% of votes cast in the FCT. The plaintiffs, Anyebunam Okoye, David Adza, Jeffrey Uche, Osang Paul, and Chibike Nwachukwu, who sued for themselves and on behalf of other residents and registered voters in the FCT, are asking the court to determine whether or not the person who is to be elected President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and consequently Administrator of the FCT through the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory and the Federal Capital Territory Development Authority on the first ballot is required by Section 134, subsection 2b of the Constitution to obtain at least 25% of the votes cast in the FCT. The plaintiffs also want a declaration extending President Muhammadu Buhari's tenure pending when a successor is determined in accordance with the Constitution. And Nigeria's former head of state, General Yakubu Gowon, is of the opinion that regular investments in the dynamic health sector will go a long way in addressing the medical needs of Nigerians. General Gowon made the point at the 50th anniversary celebration of the University of Benin Teaching Hospital in Benin City, the state capital. He was in attendance at the commissioning of the institution back then as head of state of Nigeria.
A picture gallery that tells the story of the commissioning of the Midwest Medical Center, now known as the University of Benin Teaching Hospital, UBTH, on May 12, 1973. 50 years on, General Yakubu Gowon and his wife Victoria are back in the UBTH for the Golden Jubilee celebration. What started as a 360-bed facility has now grown into a 960-bed health institution. The federal government says UBTH has carved a niche for itself as a leading referral center.
The UBTH has, over and beyond that, begun to profile itself as a major center of excellence and is building up its own reputation in cancer treatment. Very soon we'll be getting more assets for cancer treatment.
For the Edo State government, UBTH has been of immense help to healthcare delivery, particularly coming to the rescue during the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Godwin Obaseki insists that public institutions require adequate funds for quality healthcare delivery.
Emphasis must now be focused on health financing. Government alone can no longer carry the bulk of the cost of providing healthcare services, particularly when you note that there are now more private providers of healthcare services than public providers like UBTH. His Excellency.
General Gowon in his address toes the line of Mr. Obaseki. He adds that everyone in the health ecosystem should always be prepared to adapt to the modern day medical practices.
The healthcare landscape is constantly evolving, and we must continue to adapt and innovate to meet the challenging needs of our patients. Let us renew our commitment to and in providing quality health care to all Nigerians.
The University of Benin Teaching Hospital is sixth in the line of first-generation public health tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
And the Pro-Chancellor of Bowen University, Deaconess Joan Ayo, today led a team of the school's management on a courtesy call to Channels Television's headquarters in Lagos. They were received by the chairman of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momo, with some members of the management of Channels Television. This is in preparation of the school's 21st convocation celebration, which comes up later. The Pro-Chancellor and the institution's Vice-Chancellor speak on the factors that stand the institution out in its 21 years of operation.
Bowen University has succeeded in building a brand, and that brand is centered around its core values. It's not just training students academically, but also equipping them with the fear of God, with excellence. And we're not just training them just to memorize and regurgitate whatever they've learned in the classroom. It's a blend of practical education that exhibits itself in entrepreneurship and leadership.
Bowen University, what we are doing is building up our students in Christ-like character, such that they can display unique academic excellence and define their future. And that is what all we've been doing at Focus on. Our students in the last about 2 years ago or 3, there was this programming competition at the National Mathematical Center of all universities. In programming, Bowen University came first. Okay, we were to actually represent Nigeria in Egypt, the African competition. Unfortunately, we couldn't get visa and the like of that. We've been there in public speaking across universities. Either we have second this year, we take first the other year, and so on. in quiz, in debating, and what have you, which we do among universities. Bowen has been in the first three.
Well, let's head to Abuja for more stories, where it looks like Terry is set for the weekend. Hi, Terry.
No idea why you think I'm set for the weekend, but I'm set to bring you stories from the nation's capital. Now, the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, has commissioned the Kano Irrigation Scheme project in Zangon Buhari, Bunkure local government area. The project, which is targeted at 45,000 farming families, cut across 5 local government areas in the state. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyasu has more on the report.
Farmers in Bunkure, Kura, Garumala, Bebeji, and other local government areas in Kano State are active all through the year as the federal government rehabilitates and expands the Kano River Irrigation Scheme.
The project covers about 14,444 hectares, serving about 45,000 farmers. The infrastructure were dilapidated, and there was a lot of lost command area when the intervention started. But now everything is completed 100%.
Governor Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano State says projects like this will boost the economy of the state.
Kano State being the most popular state in the Federation, there's no doubt our immediate need cannot be more than food security. So the commissioning of this irrigation scheme has no doubt increasing the socio-economic development of the city. Kano State being the commercial nerve center of the northern part of this country, now His Excellency has moved us to the next level because we are now the commercial nerve center even of some West African countries.
The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, speaks on the impact of the project on the country's economy.
Through the first direct infrastructure investments covering about 37,500 hectares across 6 states, concurrent activities in agriculture and on-farm water management in this area, approximately 140,000 farm families with about 1 million people are going to directly benefit or already are directly benefiting. Today's event is a clear demonstration of the commitment of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari.
The Vice President commissions the project in the company of the Kano State Governor. The project is expected to cater to about 45,000 farming families across the 5 local government areas in the state. Sadiq Ilyasu, Channels Television News.
Well, still ahead on the news at 10, indigenous energy company Seplat asks appeal courts to set aside judgment of a high court which granted an ex parte interim order against the company and some of its officers. Please stay with us. The news at 10 coming to you live from Channels Television. Now, the National Broadcasting Commission says it will appeal against the court's judgment nullifying its powers to fine broadcast stations for breaching its broadcasting codes if the judgment is found to be in conflict with previous judgment which empowers the Commission to regulate broadcasting in Nigeria. In a statement signed by its Director General, Balarabe Ilela, the Commission says it is yet to be served with a copy of the judgment and has therefore asked to be served. According to Mr. Ilela, global best practice and the ethics of the legal profession prevented parties to a suit from commenting freely on a judgment it has not seen and read. The Federal High Court in Abuja handed down the order of perpetual injunction in a judgment on Wednesday, cancelling NBC's powers to impose a fine on broadcast stations. Now, action must be taken by authorities to harmonize revenue collection across the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, to pave way for increased revenue generation. The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Malam Muhammad Musa Bello, made this disclosure while delivering his address to revenue officials during a retreat held in Akure, the Ondo State capital.
It's the opening ceremony of a two-day conference tagged Resolution Retreat, organized by the Federal Capital Territory Internal Revenue Service, FCTIRS, in Akure, the Ondo State capital. The retreat is all about the harmonization of revenue and ease of doing business in the Federal Capital Territory. The Honorable Minister of the FCT, Malam Muhammadu Musa Bello, represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Olushade Adeshola, says the objective of the retreat will be achieved if everyone buys into government's revenue template.
This retreat, which brings together the broad spectrum of stakeholders to rub minds and exchange ideas on how best to ensure that we attain the highest IGR generating subnational status, is indeed commendable. It is my utmost delight to see so many relevant stakeholders from across the country, and I have no iota of doubt that you will meet the objectives for which you have organized this program.
For the acting executive chairman of the FCTIRS, Haruna Abdullahi, transparency and accountability are key issues, as well as training and capacity building for staff.
It's our vision to establish a world-class revenue collection system in the FCT that is transparent and accountable. We aim to achieve this by creating a single unified platform and dashboard that will enable us to track and monitor all revenue generated in the FCT, to ensure that all revenue in the FCT is properly accounted for and reported with the highest level of transparency and accuracy.
In his address delivered by the State Commissioner for Finance, Ondo State Governor Oluwarotimi Akeredolu expresses delight at the opportunity to host the retreat.
Ondo State is highly honored for the privilege to host this event. I'm indeed excited about the possibilities offered.
Revenue generation is a vital aspect of governance, as the authorities depend on funds generated by the various agencies such as the NPA, NNPCL, Customs and the Internal Revenue Service to run the administration.
That wraps us up from the nation's capital. And Millicent, for the last time this week, back to you.
Thanks, Terry. And as part of activities to mark its 40th anniversary, real estate firm Dia Fatimilehi and Company, they've held a commemorative conference with stakeholders in the industry. Established in May 1983, Dia Fatimilehi and Company is one of the country's foremost real estate firms and has grown to become a trusted and reliable household name.
It's the 40th anniversary commemorative conference of Dia Fatimilehi and Company, bringing together professionals in the real estate industry. The conference is part of activities lined up to celebrate the firm's 40-year journey, and DFC's partner, head of practice, Idowu Bakari, gives an overview of the journey so far.
An organization that started in a small office 4 decades ago has now grown to be a leading organization that has impacted the sector in every significant ways.
The founding partner, Mr. Gboyega Fatimilehi, adds his voice to the conversation, scaling up real estate in Nigeria by speaking to the country's housing deficit.
Estimate of the present level of housing supply into the market today is about 100,000 units annually. However, a case can be made that this is overstated by our own estimation in Dia Fatimilehi and Company. When we did our own survey, it's less than 70,000 units. According to some estimates, to breach this current housing deficit, Nigeria needs to produce about 1 million housing units every year. And we are producing less than 100,000.
The keynote speaker, who is an international housing finance consultant from Malaysia, shares some insights into the topic.
There are various ministries which are responsible for housing. The trouble we find is, in most countries, the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. So there's very little coordination, as a result of which there's overlap and sometimes even duplication and bureaucracy, and this delays the whole process.
3 separate panel sessions engaged the audience with insightful discussions on enhancing housing supply, the role of technology in scaling real estate in Nigeria, and financing housing to achieve scale. Another highlight of the conference is the presentation of awards to winners of the inaugural essay competition for undergraduates and recent graduates of real estate across the country.
Time for business news now. Here's Anne Waldo. Thank you, Millicent. Hello and welcome to Business News. Indigenous energy company Seplat Energy PLC has asked the Court of Appeal to set aside the judgment of Justice Inyang Ekwo of the Federal High Court Abuja, which granted an ex parte interim order against the company and some of its officers. In its notice of appeal filed at the Registry of the Federal High Court, Seplat asked the Appellate Court to allow the appeal and set aside the decision of the lower court made on May the 11th this year, which restrained the board chairman, the named independent non-executive directors, the chief operating officer and the company secretary from operating or functioning as officers of Seplat Energy in any capacity or otherwise conducting the affairs of the company. The company's external counsel, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Bode Olanipekun, says the interim orders were obtained by 3 shareholders who cumulatively had about 161 shares out of 500 million issued shares of that company. Mr. Olanipekun says that there are special procedures for the removal of directors of a company under the Companies and Allied Matters Act, CAMA, and same was not the basis for the removal of Seplat's directors in this instance. Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC GTCO has held its second annual general meeting where a dividend of 3 naira 10 kobo for a share totaling 91.2 billion naira has been endorsed by shareholders. The meeting, which was held virtually, was an opportunity for the Group Executive Officer, Mr. Segun Agbaje, to share some highlights of the group's performance for the year 2022, which he describes as decent in spite of the varying challenges and headwinds. For the second time since the completion of the corporate reorganization of Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC, GTCO, the company is holding its annual general meeting. This time it's virtual.
Notice is hereby given that the second annual general meeting of Guarantee Trust Holding Company PLC, the company,
as required, invitation and notification had been shared, and on the group's website, individuals could register and eventually join in. Forming a quorum, some board members, executive management, registrar, external editors, and shareholders are set, and the board chairman, Mr. Hezekiah Oyinlola, declares the meeting open.
Great pleasure. We bid you all a very warm welcome to this second annual general meeting of the company.
Commendations, concerns, and questions came to the fore during the question and answer session.
I'm going to take the questions which you asked, and then I have some questions that came online which I will always deal with.
The Group Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Segun Agbaje, had answers to the concerns and questions.
The first one came from Alhaji Kabiru. Thank you very much for the commendations. We are always humbled by the commendations we get. You're right, any bank that doesn't go digital will die. We like how our digital banking is growing. We do have challenges from time to time, but it's a commitment that we've made both from a banking perspective and with the creation of Habari.
Voting on the resolution will be by poll.
Board chairman coordinates the next segments, which is resolutions, which have been put up for shareholders to approve. Rules set, voting procedure shared, voting commenced. Resolutions include to consider audited financial statement, declare a dividend which was set at 3 naira 10 kobo for each share, to authorize directors to fix remuneration of auditors, approve compliance with the rule of Nigerian Exchange Limited, among others.
resolutions approved, the Group Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Segun Agbaje, itemized the performance of the group in 2022 to include a pre-tax profit of 214.2 billion naira, representing a dip of 3%. Gross earnings increased by 20.4% to 539.2 billion naira in full year 2022 from 447.8 billion naira in 2021. The board and executive management team of GTCO Holding PLC says it prides itself in its unbroken streak of year-on-year growth and a consistent lead in driving the digitization of financial services since commencing operations of Guaranty Trust Bank in February 1991.
Well, it's back to winning ways for the domestic stock market. It ended the second week in the month of May with a moderate rebound at the close of trade today. John Mekwa has the details.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the stock market reports. That's right, the bull is back, and that's because the all-share index closed positive today at 0.10%. Of course, we're still doing the 52,000 there, 52,214.62, and the market cap is still holding strong at 28 trillion naira. Leading the positive sentiment that we see at the market today, MRS, it gained 3 naira 5 kobo to close at 33 naira 75 kobo. Adova also gained 2 naira 20 kobo to close at 26 naira 40 kobo. So, no wonder the oil and gas counter is deeply in the green, 1.36%. There we see it. And then the figures have recovered, thankfully. So banking is up 0.22%. Unfortunately, Accessco is not yet recovered. It lost today. Share 30 kobo to close at 9 naira 9 kobo. And consumer goods is still in the red. Also, now the activity charts, a little bit of flip there because we've been seeing deals in the green, but today it ended in the red at 5,527, while value and volume looking really good there at the close of trade. It's a good one that we're leaving the bull on the floor of the NGX for the weekend. We'll meet it there on Monday. But that's the stock market report. I'm John Mekwa. Back to you, Anne.
Thanks for watching Business News Tonight. I'm Anne Nwawadu. The rest of the news at 10 continues now with Millicent. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, Anne. And after months of slow Russian advances in the devastated city of Bakhmut, the momentum appears to have shifted as Ukraine claims gains over the city. The battle for the eastern Ukrainian city has been the longest and bloodiest of this war so far. Western officials estimate between 20,000 and 30,000 Russian troops have been killed or wounded there, while Ukraine's military has also paid a heavy price. Here's Simon Pusey with more on this and other international stories and around the world in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the channel's studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Ukraine says it has recaptured ground in Bakhmut, a rare advance after months of grinding Russian gains in the eastern city. This Ukrainian footage apparently showing drone attacks on Russian forces in the city. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister said Ukrainian forces have advanced 2 kilometers in a week. The claims signal a momentum shift in Bakhmut, but more widely there is no clear evidence of the much-anticipated Ukrainian counteroffensive. Russia has denied reports of Ukrainian gains after claims from both sides. Pakistan's ex-Prime Minister Imran Khan has been freed from custody a day after the Supreme Court ruled his dramatic arrest on corruption charges was illegal. Here's seen smiling as he walked free from court earlier. Judges granted Mr. Khan protected bail, meaning he can't be rearrested on those charges for at least 2 weeks. His supporters celebrated the news on the streets. The 70-year-old's arrest escalated tensions between him and the military. Many analysts believe Mr. Khan's election win in 2018 happened with the help of the military, but that he later fell out with the army. Israel's military says it has resumed striking targets in the Gaza Strip, which they said belonged to the Islamic Jihad militant group. Earlier, sirens went off outside Jerusalem, warning of incoming rocket fire for the first time since fighting between Israel and Palestinian militants in the Gaza Strip intensified this week. It comes as Gazans buried a Palestinian militant who was killed by Israeli forces during the fighting between Israel and Gaza. Finance leaders of the Group of 7 nations and their counterparts from guest countries have gathered for a family photo in the Japanese city of Niigata. Japanese Finance Minister Shinichi Suzuki and Bank of Japan Governor Kazuo Ueda sat side by side during the outdoor photo session with US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, seen waving to photographers alongside other finance leaders. China is much on the minds of the G7 group, with current G7 chair Japan leading fresh efforts to diversify supply chains and reduce their heavy reliance on Beijing.
This is a challenging time for the global economy. It's coming off a long period of artificially low interest rates. As those interest rates normalize, it puts stresses on various parts of the world economy. That might be duration mismatches that show up in the banking system. It also means investments that looked like they were a good idea under one interest rate environment that aren't such a good idea now. So all of that takes time to sort out. As we look forward, we're worried that there's not enough investment taking place to really create future growth.
Around 60,000 people are waiting to cross into the US from Mexico, that's according to officials, after a pandemic-era border policy expired on Friday. The policy known as Title 42 allowed the US to swiftly deport people without an asylum hearing, using the coronavirus pandemic as justification. It ended overnight after 3 years, along with the country's national COVID-19 health emergency. President Joe Biden has announced new rules to replace it. Rescue workers are still searching for the missing in the East Democratic Republic of Congo. Here, Red Cross workers digging for bodies in the mud. It's after huge floods killed more than 400 people, a number expected to rise greatly. More than 5,000 people are still missing. And the last 10 acts who get to perform in the Eurovision Song Contest Grand Final have been selected at the second semi-final in Liverpool.
Let the Eurovision Song Contest second semi-final begin!
Armenia, Estonia, Cyprus, Belgium, Poland, Slovenia, Austria, Albania, Lithuania and Australia were all voted through by viewers to the final on Saturday. They joined 10 qualifiers from the first semi-final, 2022 winner Ukraine, and the Big Five countries Britain, France, Germany, Italy and Spain. In a change to recent years, the semi-finals were decided only by viewer votes without any jury input. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the channel's studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. In the world of sports, Paris Saint-Germain coach Christophe Galtier has confirmed that Lionel Messi will start Saturday's Ligue 1 game against Ajaccio, marking the Argentina superstar's return from suspension. The 35-year-old World Cup winner was banned by the club after an unauthorized trip to Saudi Arabia. With PSG out of the Champions League and only 4 league matches remaining as they target a record 11th title, this is likely to be Messi's penultimate appearance at the club. Away from France, Manchester City forward Erling Haaland has been named the Football Writers Association Men's Footballer of the Year for 2022-2023 season. Haaland has contributed an incredible 51 goals in all competitions so far this season as Manchester City look to secure a historic treble. The 22-year-old's goals have come in just 47 appearances, and his strike against West Ham earlier this month took him to 35 in the league, earning him the outright record for most goals in a Premier League campaign. Meanwhile, treble-chasing Manchester City will face a hectic schedule over the season's final few weeks, but manager Pep Guardiola is not concerned about these teams spreading themselves too thin, saying his players understand the gravity of every game and that the rewards are great. Manchester City are just a point ahead of Arsenal atop the Premier League with a game in hand, and will look to extend that lead when they play Everton on Sunday at Goodison Park. And that's Sports News tonight. Thanks indeed for watching. I am Kelly Egiga. It's back to Millicent.
Thanks, Kelly. And the main news again. The Chief of Defense Staff and other top military officers today testified before a special investigative panel probing alleged human rights violations by the military during counterinsurgency operations in the northeast. Also today, the PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar and former Vice President Namadi Sambo asked party members to remain united and hopeful of victory at the Presidential Election Tribunal. And Ukraine today announced that it has recaptured ground in Bakhmut, a rare advance after months of grinding Russian gains in the eastern city. And that's your news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Have a good weekend ahead.